Ayubavan, Namaste, and good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you joining us here today at the Delivering for Nutrition in South Asia, Connecting the Dots Across Systems conference, taking place in this beautiful Colombo, and our online participants who are joining us from all around the globe. My name is Isha Saraswat, and I'm honored to be the host for you for this event. Over the next 3 days, we will come together to explore one of the most pressing challenges facing South Asia today, malnutrition in its many forms. We'll discuss how these issues are intertwined with agriculture, food systems, healthcare, climate change, and more. Most importantly, we will work towards solutions that cross sectors, bringing together experts, policymakers, researchers, and stakeholders from around the world. Before I hand it over and invite the co-chairs of the session, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the devastating impact of Cyclone Fengal, which recently affected many communities in the region. Our hearts go out to all those who have been affected, those who have lost loved ones, homes, and livelihoods. The challenges brought by this natural disaster remind us of the vulnerabilities that many communities face in the face of extreme weather events. As we gather here today and for the next 3 days to discuss solutions for improving nutrition and food security, we must recognize the critical importance of resilience in the face of such challenges. With this, now I would like to invite the co-chairs for our opening session, Dr. Purnima Menon and Dr. Dushini Virakun. Dr. Menon is the Senior Director for Food and Nutrition in IFPRI, where she oversees 3 units: Nutrition, Diets and Health, Poverty, Gender and Inclusion, and Markets, Trade and Institution, and is based in New Delhi, India. Dr. Menon directs Partnerships and Opportunity to Strengthen and Harmonize Actions for Nutrition in India, an initiative to support more use of evidence for nutrition in India. With us, we also have Dr. Dushini Virakun. Dr. Virakun is the Executive Director of the Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, with research and publications covering macroeconomic policy, regional trade integration, and international economics. She serves at present as an appointed member to the Monetary Policy Board at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka and as an independent non-executive director at PLC. She has previously served as a director on the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, the nation's trust bank. She holds a BSc in economics with first-class honors from the Queen's University of Belfast, UK, and an MA and PhD in economics from the University of Manchester, UK. A round of applause for our co-chairs. And now I hand it over to Purnima Menon and Dr. Virakun to officially open the conference.
Wow. Welcome, everyone. It feels a little like deja vu because the conference has such a strong visual identity. It's wonderful to see the room so full today. And it's wonderful to be here in Colombo. Like Isha, I acknowledge the impact that we've had of the cyclone just a few days ago. It's just a great reminder of how fragile the world is that we live in. And I feel very fortunate that we can be here together today despite the challenges. As IFPRI's Senior Director for Food and Nutrition Policy, I welcome you all on behalf of both our global leadership team, our regional leadership team, and I begin with gratitude for your partnership in hosting what promises to be yet another stellar feast of evidence, experience, of old friendships renewed, connections, new connections made, and new relationships forged. I want to say a couple of things in my opening remarks. I'm going to ask for some leniency on the timing there, because there are some important themes and things that bring us together here. South Asia, the region of my birth, is a region that has captured both the heart and mind and continues to do so for those who really have the pleasure of being from here, of working here, working in community with people from here. With the world's largest population numbers, the region is almost always in the news for the things that keep many people up all night as we think about the challenges that lie ahead of us. Large numbers of malnourished people, inequities of every shape, kind of geographic positioning that contributes to huge potential for climate change impacts, and sort of deep-rooted social inequalities that refuse to really go away. At the same time, it's also a region that's delivering change. It's innovating, solving these very same problems. And those of you in the room who are with us today, both physically and virtually, are very much part of the world that is delivering that change. What the region often offers us, despair, joy, excitement, frustration, and success, often in equal measures at the same time, is really par for the course for a life lived in this part of the world, trying to solve wicked problems like malnutrition. Many states, countries in the region stand out in the fight against malnutrition. They offer exemplars of outsized change, more than what we have seen in many other countries. Sri Lanka in itself is an exemplar of incredible change that has happened over the many years that has helped to solve some of the toughest public health and malnutrition challenges. But what lies ahead of us is really nothing to sneeze at. Burgeoning cities, weather extremes that we've just experienced, the environmental cost of the economic growth engines that power these nations, as I mentioned, our long-standing social inequalities. So the only choice really that we have in trying to solve wicked problems is to understand together, to act from wherever we can, to advocate, to deploy resources, and really come together in community, because the challenge of malnutrition is too big for that, for us to try to do it one-on-one. Now, research and implementation experiences, and the reason we really bring that together has always been a focus of delivering for nutrition. Our goal has always been to create a conference space that centers the kind of research that can deliver impact, that can do so as seamlessly and efficiently as possible. We went beyond a research conference to integrate implementation and policy experiences, because we learned that valuing experience is just as important as valuing evidence. And so for us, therefore, we connect the dots in many different ways in this setting. We have many people here who've contributed to making this conference a success. And I think we often thank those people only at the end. I wanted to do so right at the beginning because we're all here together. D4N is, I think, in its 7th year. 2016 is when we first started as a very small effort in India. And it's become something and beyond anything we could imagine. I learned from Isha only today that we have 30 co-host organizations in the region. So I want to first ask you all to put your hands together for all of the co-hosts. It is really wonderful to see the connections here. I want to especially thank our Sri Lankan co-host organizations, the Institute for Policy Studies, Wayamba University, University of Peradeniya, and the International Water Management Institute. We could not host a conference like this without your incredible support, and together with the conference secretariat, you have all played an incredible role. I also want to take a moment to recognize the contributions of several people here who are here from across the CGIAR. It's yet another effort at connecting dots. The conference started with IFPRI, a CGIAR sister center, and we've now expanded to include a very large number of CG centers. So to all my colleagues from across the CG in the room, also extend my gratitude to all of you, because the challenges that we face require global organizations that really hit many different parts of the centers, many different parts of the systems we look to change. Now, I also want to, of course, please put your hands together for Isha and Julie, and we could not do it without them. You are really the face of the conference and the people who bring it all together, and we would be remiss to not thank you right up front. I think we have an incredible scientific program committee, Neha Kumar, Shreya Chakravarti, Alison Liang, and Sam Scott. They do a lot of work to pull together the many abstracts that people submit into this incredible program and feast that we have today. Not unlike the incredible cuisine of South Asia, in today's program, you will find a surfeit of tasty bites to energize you. And I really want to thank the Scientific Program Committee and all the co-hosts who brought that together. Before I hand over to Dushni, I also want to recognize just a couple of people in the room. Shakuntala, I don't know if you're here. Oh, could you please take a moment to stand up? I want to welcome and honor Shakuntala Tilsted. Please stay standing. Thank you. Shakuntala is a World Food Prize winner. We are so glad you're here to spend these days with us, and we'll hear from you at the end. but I did want to take a moment to recognize you and your great contributions to nutrition in the region. So special welcome to you. Also, of course, a special welcome to our keynote speaker, P. Sainath, a tireless advocate and storyteller about rural lives in India, and so many other nutrition champions who are here from all walks of life. We will not have the minister joining us today, so we have just a little bit of room in our opening session, which is why I decided to say a little bit more about the conference and some of the ethos and the values that we want to carry in this. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of around D4N is that we see this evolving into a major effort to support what we call allyship in global health and global development, the kinds of things that Global North and international organizations can do to really support equitable participation and engagement of researchers and practitioners in the region who spend their lives working tirelessly for the region. I'm especially proud that this conference is doing things that many other conferences are only beginning to talk about and are inching towards bringing together many young researchers from the region with no registration costs, with travel expenses paid for many of them, thanks to the generous contributions of various co-hosts, trying to host a conference in a visa-friendly city, visa-friendly country, in a world where we talk increasingly about decolonizing science and creating equitable platforms for people to come together, to build community around science. These details matter tremendously, and we take them very seriously. I'm especially grateful for the kind of work that Isha and her team have done to continue to make sure that this platform itself is one that creates equitable opportunities for participation. So, on behalf, again, of IFPRI's global leadership team, of our regional leadership team, the conference, and all the conference co-hosts, I welcome you all today. I hope you have as much fun today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow as you can. I hope you meet people who are very different from yourselves and just enjoy all of the richness that this event has to offer. Dushni, let me welcome you as well. Thank you for your incredible support, not just to this, but to the research that is done across the region. Dushni is a macroeconomist, and so I just think it's wonderful that we will have a macroeconomist speak a little bit and offer her welcome remarks. You have a lot to do to solve the nutrition challenges of the world, so welcome.
Thank you, Purnima. Let me also join Purnima in extending a very warm welcome to all of you for this conference on delivering for nutrition in South Asia. Special warm welcome to all the foreign participants who have traveled to join us here in Colombo. I hope that you enjoy your stay and have a very comfortable time in Sri Lanka. The Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka is very pleased to partner IFPRI on this conference. We have a long history of working with IFPRI on research, policy engagement and communication. And on this topic of nutrition, I think, as Purnima said, this is a very sort of continuing concern for most countries in South Asia. And as she very correctly said, I'm a macroeconomist, not a nutrition specialist, so I look at it in terms of its broader impacts on food price inflation and how that impacts the nutritional standards of our people in this region. And South Asian countries have been subject to a great deal of internal, external shocks since COVID-19. Sri Lanka went through its own economic crisis. There has been the impacts of the Ukraine-Russia conflict on food prices, fuel price increases. All of this has meant that there has been high food inflation and high volatility in food price inflation over the last years. And many of our governments have rolled out policy interventions to try and soften the blow on consumers, especially for the poorer households. They have rolled out cash transfer programs. increased minimum wages, provided subsidies for fuel, fertilizer, etc. Some governments have imposed caps on export of key food commodities. Others have also tried to impose caps on price increases on key food commodities, etc. So calibrating all of these policy responses, I mean, there are trade-offs. And I think, as Purnima mentioned, these policy interventions to make food systems more resilient cuts across food, agriculture, nutrition, climate change, all of these, and I don't think any one country or institution is able to handle all of this on its own. So IFPRI, I think, should be commended for bringing all of us here together under one roof, and those who are joining online to look at policy interventions and instruments that can advance the cause of better nutrition outcomes in South Asia. I think South Asian countries are unique, but we also share a great deal of similarities in terms of our agriculture sectors, in terms of consumption patterns, etc. And there is a lot to be learned from what our neighbors have done and what has worked and what has not in pushing this agenda forward. I'm not going to take too long because I think it is a packed agenda, though there is a little flexibility in the opening session. But let me move on to inviting our special guest who will deliver her remarks. May I invite Loshana Pires to please join us on the podium. She's the Additional Secretary to His Excellency the President at the Presidential Secretariat in Sri Lanka, and stands at the forefront of Sri Lanka's battle against malnutrition as the scaling up nutrition focal point here. She has extensive experience working at different departments, agencies of the government of Sri Lanka. She has worked through her career and held key positions at the Ministry of Mass Media, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment, and various departments within the Ministry of Finance, including external resources and the General Treasury. I think she's very qualified to speak on the topic of what is happening in Sri Lanka, take some of the recommendations that will come out of this conference to the policy arena and help fine-tune policy responses to address problems of nutritional issues. Most of us have seen the progress that we made regress to a large extent over the last 2-3 years, so a lot of work has to go in. So with that, let me once again congratulate IFPRI for bringing all of 30 partners together, and then Isha and her team who have handled all the logistics and administrative arrangements. As partners, IPS had very little to contribute. So I thank IFPRI wholeheartedly for organizing this 3-day conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dushini. Good morning, Ayubowan, co-chairs, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends. It is a profound honor to address this gathering as Sri Lanka's scaling up nutrition focal point. Today, we stand united by shared commitment to transforming lives through nutrition and a collective determination to achieve a world free from malnutrition in all its forms. The Sun movement is built on the principle that everyone has the right to food and good nutrition. Since Sri Lanka joined this global movement, in 2012, it has made significant strides in addressing malnutrition through collaborative, multi-sectoral efforts. With the support of the Sun Civil Society Alliance and the Sun Business Network, we have harnessed the power of partnerships between government entities, intergovernmental agencies, donors, civil society organizations, private sector players, and technical experts to tackle nutrition challenges. Sri Lanka's national priorities for scaling up nutrition are comprehensive and deeply rooted in the life cycle approach. From optimizing maternal, infant, and young child nutrition to addressing micronutrient deficiencies and preventing diet-related non-communicable diseases, we are working to ensure that every individual has access to safe, sufficient, and nutritional food. These priorities are complemented by targeted interventions for vulnerable populations and robuster efforts to build nutrition capacity, manage data effectively, and promote advocacy. This conference reflects the spirit of that mission. From the scheduled discussions on maternal and child nutrition to digital innovations in health and food systems, we are reminded the power of collective action. I hope this session will offer us very perspectives and actionable strategies to navigate the complex pathways connecting food, health, and development systems. As we delve into thematic dialogue and research showcases, I urge each of you to think broadly and critically. How can we further integrate nutrition into national development agendas in a way that leaves no one behind, particularly most vulnerable among us? How can we ensure robust tracking of nutrition financing measure the efficiency and impact of our investments? Moreover, how do we institutionalize multi-sectoral collaboration at every level, local, subnational, national, and global, to create synergies that amplify our collective efforts? Most importantly, how can our actions today lay the foundation for a legacy of health, resilience, and prosperity for generations to come? Let us challenge ourselves to answer these questions and transform them into actionable solutions. Let us also celebrate the incredible achievements of South Asia in advancing nutrition security. Together, we must address the remaining challenges with renewed vigor, leveraging partnerships and the vast pool of expertise present here. In closing, I express my deep appreciation to the organizers, partners, and participants of this conference. Your commitment to improving lives through better nutrition exemplifies the values of shared responsibility, and action. Let us take this inspiration from this gathering to work harder, collaborate smarter, and dream bigger. Thank you, and look forward to the beautiful and fruitful outcomes of this event. Have a great time in Sri Lanka, our paradise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those inspiring words, and actually to the very important questions you posed for us at the very end. I think those questions have implications for research, they have implications for policy and for action. So really grateful for that and for your leadership for nutrition in Sri Lanka. We have a voice from the global nutrition community joining us next. So I'm going to ask the team to pull up the video. Afshan Khan, who is an Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations and coordinator of the global Scaling Up Nutrition Sun movement, also a fellow South Asian, was not able to join us here today, but she sent a video really to offer her thoughts on the importance of connecting evidence and policy also to the work that needs to happen globally in terms of improving nutrition. Afshan has supported the implementation of many national nutrition programs, but her most prominent role in the last few years has been truly to be that global champion for nutrition, carrying the voice and the importance of tackling malnutrition challenges to people that work in places that often seem far-flung from the challenge of malnutrition, but in fact have tremendous links to the challenge. Let me ask the organizers to pull up the video, please. Afshan will speak for just a couple of minutes.
Distinguished colleagues and partners, South Asia has made considerable progress in nutrition. Stunting has dropped from 40% to 30%, and fewer people, just over 50%, struggle to afford a healthy diet. But challenges remain. Rising rates of childhood overweight and adult obesity highlight the growing burden of malnutrition in all its forms. This is consequential because nutrition is the cornerstone of human capital and economic productivity. In South Asia, only 48% of children will grow up to reach their full potential. To change this, we need to connect the dots between research and evidence and action. Take Pakistan, for example. The Sun Academia and Research Network has partnered with organizations like the Higher Education Commission and the Australian government to link research with policy. Projects like adolescent food choices and digital nutrition education are paving the way for impactful, innovative interventions. This is where sharing data and evidence becomes critical. By exchanging knowledge and scaling up evidence-based solutions, South Asian countries can amplify multi-sectoral nutrition plans and secure $23 return on every $1 invested. The future of nutrition in South Asia depends on collaboration. By connecting research, innovation, and multi-sectoral action, we can ensure healthier lives and a stronger region. Let's work together to make good nutrition for all a reality.
That was short and sweet. Thank you for sharing your appreciation for Afshan. Let me now welcome Isha Saraswat to come up and give us a very brief overview of the conference. Isha's name is now very familiar to all of you. She's a senior communications specialist with IFPRI and anchors the production of D4N amongst the many other things she does in her role to support stakeholder engagement and communication for nutrition in South Asia. Over to you, Isha.
Thank you, Purnima. And can I have the slides up? I'll just quickly take 5 minutes to go over the 3 days. Okay, so let me start with that why we came up with Delivering for Nutrition. because it was important to achieve nutrition goals, and it was important for achieving nutrition goals to bring together the stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, I mean the researchers, implementers, and policymakers, to discuss the latest evidence and to focus on the upcoming research needs. So that's the idea behind organizing Delivering for Nutrition. And when we say delivering for nutrition, the word delivering in Delivering for Nutrition draws attention to the process of how any intervention, if implemented poorly, will likely fail to improve any outcome or any nutrition. So when we talk about the word delivery in our name of the conference, Delivering for Nutrition, we talk about the delivering of the solutions and delivering of the programs and policies. Where we started and how we have grown. So D4N is the 7th edition, Purnima already mentioned. What has changed? It was an India-specific conference from 2016 to now, from 2021 to 2024, it's now a regional conference with 8 SAARC countries. We started with around 150 to 200 people in the room when we started in 2016, and this time in 2024, we have more than 1,300 registrants, and the people are still registering for the virtual participation. We started with a half-day conference, and now we have a 3-day agenda in front of us. We started with in-person. During COVID, we went to the virtual mode, and now, after COVID, this is our second hybrid conference with online participants and in-person participants joining us. Started with just an IFPRI conference, this time co-owned by 30 different co-hosts. So there is where we have reached from 2016 to 2024. The top 2 photos are from our 2018 event, I think, and the bottom 2 are from our Nepal Delivering for Nutrition that happened in 2023. This year's themes. So basically, the idea of this year's themes, Connecting the Dots, is derived from the high-level panel of experts framework on food security and nutrition, what we call the HLP framework, that talks about malnutrition malnutrition results from a complex interplay of factors. And if we want to tackle malnutrition, we cannot just tackle one factor on one issue. We have to tackle the different, all relevant sectors need to come together, and we need to talk about the cross-sector solutions. In South Asia specifically, when we do policy reviews, we see that all the countries in South Asia, or at least most of the countries in South Asia, have very good policies on paper. But what we lack is implementation, monitoring, and evaluating these policies to ensure that we reach our nutrition goals. So the 12 themes for this conference that you see here in the 12 dots, and we are trying to connect these dots in the upcoming 3 days. You will have more details in the agenda. On the first page of the agenda, you will see what are the 12 themes that we are talking about. So just take a look at the agenda for more information. In numbers, we received, this year we received the highest number of abstracts, 510 abstracts, and this was the first year that we received abstracts from all the 8 SAARC countries. Which also means, because you can see we could only program 63 oral and 56 rapid-fire presentations. So it was a very difficult decision-making process and very rigorous selection process for the abstracts that received this year. We had 2 reviewers, actually 3 reviewers reviewing each abstract, and then we finally programmed those abstracts in the conference. Because the quality was so good, so our technical team, hats off to our technical team, I don't know how they did it. But yes, this time it was very difficult decisions for us to make. So if your abstract didn't get selected, it was not because of the quality, it was just because we had so many this time. I already talked about, we have more than 350 registrations. This is yesterday's number, with around 486 in person, and I can see the room is full, so I think we achieved what we were heading for. And we have online registration and in-person registration from around 55 countries this year. So more than regional, this conference is going to the globe, at the global level as well. I would like to ask all the co-hosts, both the co-host and our funders, if you are in the room, can you please stand up so we can give you a round of applause, because this conference would not have been possible if it was not for your support. So anybody from these organizations which is there on the screen, if you are in the room, we request you to kindly stand up, and we request all of you to kindly give them a round of applause. Thank you so much, guys. This is all of us coming together, and thank you so much once again. This is my last slide. Everybody has the agenda booklet. So if you can look at the agenda booklet, I don't want you to read what I have on the image. All the yellow sessions are the plenary sessions that will happen in this room. All the blue sessions are thematic parallel sessions. So we will have 2 thematic parallel sessions running simultaneously, one in this room and one in the room just across the corridor. It's called Saffron and Ginger. All the pink sessions are the learning labs, which will be 3 learning labs running at the same time. So 3 parallel learning labs, one in this room, one in Saffron and Ginger across the hall, and one in Tamarind room across the hall. So these are just few logistic informations for you. So sessions will be held across 3 venues. Each venue will have the daily schedule posted in front of the room, so you can see, and also in your agenda booklet. Towards the end of each day, we will have a reflection poll, 2 to 3 quick yes/no questions. We will have the QR code up towards the end of the day. You can scan the QR code, and our virtual participants can also scan the QR code and answer the questions. And we will have the names entered into a raffle, and there'll be a prize, a random prize towards the end of the conference for those who answer the questions. That's all from me. Just another few housekeeping announcements before I hand it over to Purnima. You can all connect to the Wi-Fi in the room. It's called Shangri-La. No password is required. For all the 3 days, tea and coffee during the tea and coffee break will be served here in the Lotus Room foyer. And the lunch will be served at the level 4. So you can use the 6 elevators on this floor or the escalators to go to the level 4, which will host the lunch for all the 3 days. I think with that, I will end my presentation and hand it over to Purnima and Dushni for the closing remarks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just stay there, because I think you're introducing the next session, right?
Yes.
Great. Dushni, let me thank you for co-chairing, but more importantly, for your great partnership with us, not just on the conference, but everything else. Dushni, thank you again so very much. Really inspirational words. I also want to acknowledge that we have other colleagues here from the Office of the President in Sri Lanka. Could you also stand for a moment so we can recognize you? These are signs of great commitment to solving, again, what I said is quite a wicked problem. We will discuss this. We'll discuss the challenge itself, the many different solutions to it, and how we can really try to bring things together across the many dots that need to be connected, not just across sectors, but also across from research to policy to action, financing, across multiple systems and beyond. Thank you all again for the great partnership, for your engagement with us. A special welcome and gratitude also to colleagues who have joined us from other regions this year to explore whether this is a format that might also work to bring together evidence for action in other parts of the world. So I do want to acknowledge and welcome those colleagues and partner organizations as well. Let me hand it back to Isha, who will take us to the next part of the session. Thank you again.
Thank you, Chairs. Thank you, Loshni ji, for your presence. Can we have a big round of applause for the panel? Okay. Now, as a student of mass comm and journalism many years back, it is an immense honor and privilege to introduce our keynote speaker for today. Someone whose work has not only shaped the field of journalism, but also has given a voice to those who often remain unheard, the marginalized and the underserved communities of India and beyond. I would like to welcome Dr. P. Sainath, who's the founder editor of the People's Archive of Rural India. The archive, yes, let's have a round of applause first. Dr. Sainath is the founder-editor of the People's Archive of Rural India. The archive is an outcome of his 4+ decades in journalism, including a quarter century of reporting from rural India. IFPRI, that stands for People Archives of Rural India, aims to address the complete failure of the corporate media to cover 2/3 of the country's population. Dr. Sainath, who is also former rural affairs editor of The Hindu, writer and journalism teacher, is the 2007 winner of the Raman Magsaysay Award. He has won the World Media Summit Global Award for Excellence in 2014 in public welfare reporting. He was the first reporter in the world to win the Amnesty International's Global Award for Human Rights Journalism in its inaugural year in 2000. Dr. Sainath has taught journalism in many journalism schools in India and abroad, mentoring students as well as training media professionals. As a founder of IFPRI, Dr. Sainath has created an invaluable resource for understanding the realities of rural life in India, with particular focus on agriculture, food systems, and policy impact, how policy impacts the rural communities. With this, please join me in welcoming Dr. P. Sainath, and now I would like to hand it over for his keynote lecture.
Thanks very much. I'll need a moment to get myself even more disorganized than I already am. I am going to speak to you through 4.5 stories, because I am and have been a reporter for 4.5 decades. Therefore, I'm not going into the technical issues of nutrition. Above all, I'm avoiding definitions. I'll show you a couple of slides on what happens when you get lost in definitions. Biraj, I've set my clock, okay? So, yeah. Visiting farm households in the 1980s, when I began journalism, precisely in 1980, the first thing you were met with in India, in most of the Indian countryside, when you visited a farm household, the first thing you were met with was a glass of fresh milk. Okay? This way, okay, this middle button. The first thing I was met with was a glass of fresh milk. In some parts of the country, like Maharashtra, you got an additional tumbler of milk as you left the household. In coastal Andhra Pradesh, that milk was often delivered in a silver tumbler, a sign of respect for the guest and a statement or status symbol of a farmer doing well. Yeah. In the prosperous households of South Tamil Nadu, farm households, that tumbler was one of pure brass, And if they recognized that I was also from Tamil Nadu, then that was hot copy, which you got in those brass tumblers. Now, by the 1990s, that tumbler had declined to being a stainless steel tumbler. No more silver, no more brass. In my visits to households past 1991, it was often a cracked piece of crockery, a chipped cup. By the 1990s, mid-90s, it was a glass tumbler. By 2000, the milk was replaced by chai. By early 2000s, it was black chai. The amount of sugar in the tea, conventionally a sign of affection and respect, kept shrinking. By 2003 or 4, the glass disappeared, and the small quantity of black milkless chai now came in those hideous plastic cups you get aboard trains and interstate buses. You could trace the decline of the farm household economy in that, but it was also, if you wanted to see, the disastrous effects of economic policies that allowed I should tell you about the dangers of, sorry, this is me all over. What did I do? I should have had a crash thing in clickers for dummies, but I seem to be going only one unidirectionally. Yeah, can I get back to the base? Yeah. You know, the problem with definitions, Maharashtra and India, the Indian national genius is about math and definitions. You can disappear a problem by redefining it. Now, in the state of Maharashtra, 120 million people, in 1963, we abolished famine by deleting the word famine by law from all laws of the state of Maharashtra. And this law is updated in 2012. Okay, so it means you cannot legally have a famine in Maharashtra. And whatever you have, it cannot be called a famine. Right? So this is my worry about getting lost in definitions. An act to delete the term famine from all laws in the state of Maharashtra. And you can see they said by notification in the official gazette, delete the word famine from any state law. You know, you can redefine nutrition and malnutrition till the cows come home. So this is precisely why I'm not going there. You could see the disastrous effects of government policy that allowed private companies to push down milk prices at the very time market-based pricing had allowed for price gouging at the consumer end. These were consciously crafted policies. And by the way, that led to what? It led to millions of very young, vulnerable children, this continues, growing up in farm households, going without milk. Millions of children in farm households do not get to drink a drop of animal milk because every drop of that milk is sold to finance other essentials. Through those tumblers, you can trace a bit of history of the last 40 years. We never tire of calling our farmers, the nation's food providers. Yet, the policies we've adopted on agriculture have been the most major driver in over 400,000 Indian farmers. That's an official number, taking their own lives in the last 2 decades. Often for 2 decades at the rate of one every half hour. If that's how much we care for our nation's food producers, where does that leave our commitment on malnutrition? In 2018, you can see the data on the farm suicides. This is from the National Crime Records Bureau. And by the way, you're going to find that often the slides and the text don't sync because I always get it that way. In 2018, when I was interviewing the freedom fighter Ganapati Bala Yadav at his farm household, by the way, at 98, he was a working farmer taking 45 quintals of sugarcane from about 3/4 of an acre in Sangli. He was giving me a tumbler of fresh milk as I left his home. But what I'm mentioning this because around that time, and he was part of it, was a major agitation of farmers. And oh, incidentally, what did he give me the milk in? In an aluminum alloy tumbler. Okay, that's 2019 already, 2020 already. There was a major agitation underway in the milk-producing districts of Maharashtra, Sangli, Satara, Kolhapur, all these areas. The individual farmer was getting at maximum of 16 rupees a litre, which was already much less than the 20 rupees you paid for 750 milliliters bottled water, branded water. Okay? So for a plastic bottle with water in it, you were paying 20 rupees. And the milk producer was getting 16 rupees. But it was a very major agitation, and it was one of the demands on the march, historic march of 40,000 farmers from Nashik to Mumbai, 182 kilometers. And they got the milk price raised. And I mention that because it tells you what sort of public action is likely to be the most successful in countering such policies and defending people's nutrition. I won't lecture you about what you know already about milk consumption, the frequency associated positively with the child's height, etc. We all know that. So I'll spare you that. In the early 2000s, when working in the Adivasi-dominated districts of Thane and Palghar, that time there were one district in Maharashtra, a group of school teachers ran into me at the railway station, and they had an appeal to make. They recognized me as a journalist. I used to spend a lot of time hanging around there. And they said, we are appealing to you to please ask the government, through your writing, through whatever you can do, to double the midday meal rations on Mondays. Why Mondays? Because they said these children have not had a morsel of food since the Friday midday meal. They're from the poorest Adivasi households. There is nothing their parents have to give them over the weekend. It is impossible to teach before 1 p.m. on Mondays because the kids are sitting there with their bellies on fire. Okay? So they wanted double rations on Mondays, and I later found out that, by the way, that happened in post-World War II Finland and Sweden. They increased the midday meal rations. They started midday meal schemes and increased it on Mondays. But the 1980s also saw the coming on a serious scale of the midday meal, now renamed like innumerable other things as the Pradhan Mantri Poshan Shakti Nariman or PM Poshan, which means essentially that about 120 small, very little beings, human beings, now apparently eat at the pleasure of a self-declared non-biological being. In 1982, upgrading earlier schemes, the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister, M.G. Ramachandran, gave us the statewide, state-run avatar of the midday meal scheme. I'll never forget the ridicule. I was a reporter of 2 years then. I'll never forget the ridicule the elite and the media poured on that scheme. Many of the young people sitting here have no idea how vicious that coverage was. Stories flooded the media of children being hospitalized from eating bad food, from food poisoned in the country's leading magazine by a lizard's tail. In fact, 32 children fell ill from one lizard's tail. And even cartoons in which all teachers in a school were shown as being transformed into cooks. This is a more recent meal showing the continued politics of the midday meal. And of course, the critical quotes by unnamed people in the India Today cover story of November 1982, with a headline saying, "This is essentially a shrewd political move." The scheme has encroached, I'm quoting from the India Today story, "The scheme has encroached on the school's original preserve," said the headmistress of a corporation high school in Madras. "Education is the main casualty." Moreover, she continued, a headmistress has been reduced to an accountant and her room converted to a grocer's shop. 3 years down the line, UNICEF praised as it should, praised the midday meal scheme as a model. And as 40 years later, they have praised the current Tamil Nadu government's free breakfast meal scheme. Still, the media never highlighted on any serious scale that the noon meal had brought the benefits it had brought countless millions of children. It was only with the famous right to food case of 2001, in which Biraj was involved for I don't know how long, many years, that the Supreme Court of India ordered that all states launch midday meal programs, and by 2002, many of the major ones had done so. But that 2001 is a very, very important year in history, and it gives us a glimpse of the inequalities within which the politics of nutrition unfold. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, for the first time, all three countries declared a food surplus. They declared food grain surplus, cumulatively 70 million tons, of which India's was 63 million tons. Consider, guys, three nations, home to half the world's hungry, sitting on a mountain atop a mountain of 70 million tons of grain, home to half the world's hungry, while hundreds of millions went to bed without eating 2 meals. The economist Jean Drèze did a swift back-of-the-envelope calculation. This is the midday meal scheme of that time, the photo from the Hindus of that time. Jean Drèze calculated that if all those sacks of grain lying in the FCI godowns were lined up in a row, they would stretch for 1 million kilometers, more than twice the distance from the Earth to the moon. With millions of people are undernourished, if not starving, hoarding food on this scale at an enormous cost seems tantamount to mass murder. By the way, August 2020, we had 104 million tons. I guess you could make that a four-lane highway to the moon. So but all this happened only when, that's when the court stepped in, ordered everyone to have that. And if you go back to another maverick in the south, N.T. Ramarao of Andhra Pradesh in 1983 declared that he would distribute rice at 2 rupees a kilo. The screams of expert outrage shook the stratosphere. We'll be bankrupt in weeks. 2 years down the line, every election and manifesto in India was having 2 rupees rice a kilo on the top of its list of promises. In United Andhra Pradesh, more about the midday meals, I was once surrounded by a group of very angry mothers, in Mehboob Nagar in 45 degrees heat, and they mistook me for a senior government official, thereby deeply wounding my feelings, who were demanding the reopening of the schools in the middle of bloody May. So I told the mothers, you guys are nuts, you're crazies. Your children will die of heat stroke. Already 200 people had died in AP of heat stroke. I said, your kids will die of heat stroke. Why are you asking for the reopening of the schools in mid-May? They said it's better than dying of hunger. We have nothing to give them at home. Reopening the schools would at least get them a midday meal. Incidentally, through all the years, the first 10 years that I covered that midday meal program, innumerable occasions in Tamil Nadu, I found little girls, children of migrants, slipping chapatis into their skirts, hiding it, taking it out. Ask them where you're taking it. We're taking it home because grandmother is hungry at home. They were taking it to share with their grandparents. This was in Pudukkottai, and their parents had gone as migrants to lay bricks in neighboring in Tanjavur district, neighboring Tanjavur district. But the midday meal scheme is in danger though. While there was always some non-governmental participation, for years now it is being undermined and farmed out to private and non-governmental parties of dubious commitment and competence, including groups that impose their religious and ideological preferences on the diets of children. Oh, this is apart from the rising costs. The Akshaya Patra Foundation proudly follows a sattvic regimen in its diet. In the midday meals they serve to some 2.2 million children in 23,000 schools and Anganwadis across 16 states and 2 union territories. No eggs, no onion, no garlic, nothing that can even remotely give you a sense of taste. No concern about the nutritional needs and wants of the children. Their footprint in the midday meal is increasing by the year. Many things go badly wrong when delivering food as a standardized product gets more important than the process by which you deliver nutrition and food justice to a population. The privatization of duties that are rightfully those of the state has been on for a while now. In 2018, they tried to bring in Britannia Premix as a substitute for hot cooked fresh food in the schools. In Maharashtra, a huge outcry saw that beaten back. Remember that the hot cooked food in many places was in the hands of self-help groups. Some of those members could be mothers and grandmothers of the children who were being fed. Besides, there is already an unhealthy degree of centralization in the midday meal scheme. Food, and not just premix, for instance, goes from the city of Mumbai to the Adivasi districts of Thane and Palghar. We are imposing rice and wheat on people who do not consume either. Most of those Adivasi children do not eat rice and wheat. They eat bajra, they eat jowari, that's what they eat. But we have decided, and in the centralized system, we send them rice and wheat. If instead we were to decentralize and allow such districts to use their local cereals, their local foods, you'd really be giving a very big stimulus to the local farm economy. But our policies have actually devastated the farm economy, which is perhaps the first base of a nation's nutrition. Third story. It was 2003. Now, this is an experience I believe everyone in this room has had. Yeah, I was walking along the surface of the Jurala Canal. I don't think that's an experience everyone has had, as it was being laid in 45, 47 degrees heat. And I ran into this mother, the nth such person. I ran into a mother who had given birth 48 hours earlier and was working in the canal. She had given birth 48 hours, running back every now and then to feed her baby the best she could. Both mother and baby, and the baby was in one of those cloth hammocks that you hang up there on bamboos. Yeah. Just imagine, I don't need to connect the dots between millions of babies in that most vulnerable period of 0 to 20 to 24 months. And it was a walk across Andhra Pradesh. This is at the other end. All these people working in what kind of heat? 42, 40 minimum. Here's the point that I want to make on that. Some 20 years after that, and meeting many more such women along the way, you're forced to see that the child care and maternity benefits we have are entirely absent from the lives of and inaccessible to the millions of women in the unorganized sector. The bulk of unorganized sector is women workers, and the bulk of women workers are in the unorganized sector. And the process of anything critical to nutrition, all our benefits, etc., simply do not touch them. You can connect the dots between inequality, the lack of rights and justice. And this is the point. There is little or no discussion on the fundamental, on the fundamental connections between labor rights, women's rights, health, and nutrition. Under the paralysis of COVID-19, India destroyed the gold standard of labor law for 100 years, the 8-hour working day. Under the present labor codes, we can impose a 12-hour working day on our workers. As long as we fail to do justice to the marginalized, to enforce their rights and entitlements, much of our expression of commitment to their nutrition is a sham. I'd like us to fight for a decent wage for the 13 million Anganwadi workers and 1 million Ashas, all women who are at the front line of India's nutrition and health programs. What do they earn? What do they eat? What do their children eat? I'm going to take 2 minutes because I've got one little story, half a story to tell you from that last bit of the decade. What we've actually been doing in India is to try and disappear the question of vanished questions like anemia in women. Last year, the government of India suspended and humiliated Professor K.S. James, director of the International Institute for Population Sciences, which collects crucial data for India's National Family Health Service, for the NFHS. They were asked to drop the question on anemia totally. And by the way, it showed that its prevalence was 59% among women in the 15 to 45 age groups. Anyway, James was suspended on gross irregularities which disappeared the moment he gave in his resignation. Look, if this is the way we're going to try getting rid of the problem of anemia, it's no different from the famine law of 1963. The last point that I want to make to you is about water. Oh, this is the anemia slide, you can see that. But the last point I want to make to you is about water. Now, everybody and his grandparents or her grandparents know the connections between how important water is to nutrition. But there's actually very little discussion on it because the process in India, in a process of 6 water transfers, is the process of transferring water from poor to rich. You know, look at her. She's an Adivasi in Yavatmal. She's standing on 3 bricks and a wooden block. The wooden block is the one top. She's collecting water from a leaking municipal pipe, pouring it into another vessel. She did this 40 times while we watched. She walked a short distance, maybe 400 meters or so to her home, but she covered 14 kilometers in that process, half the time carrying 2 full vessels of water, 15 or 20 liters. Sharda Badre and her daughters, they had 214 orange trees, each of which needed one big pot of water, which meant 428 trips in 45 degrees heat on 2 days in the week, which meant each of the 3 women in the house walked 40 kilometers on those days. So the actual what's happening with water is this. there's a desperate fall in water in India. You can look at the per capita availability of water has decreased from 5,177 cubic meters in 51 to 1,341 cubic meters in 2015. Water flows upwards from poor to rich, rural to urban, agriculture to industry, livelihood to lifestyle, food crop to cash crop, and virtual water transfers. I don't need to tell any of you about all the importance of water, but these are the numbers which might be useful for you. The better off do not bear the brunt of this. Look, water in India has a very strong caste geography. So the worse the situation in water gets, the worst hit will be the women and children of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. They will take the bulk of the hit. Because we have a very strong caste geography, we can discuss it if you like. In conclusion, Vasant Pargi, the great Gujarati poet, who wrote so beautifully about inequality, he died last year. Someone has certainly swallowed our share of light, for we keep burning ourselves out along with the sun for a lifetime, and still nothing ever gets illuminated. Yeah. The inequalities are at the base of all that's happening. In 1991, India had $0 billionaires. On our 78th Independence Day, we had 211. The 211 Indian billionaires, this is a slightly dated figure, because this is July, and I'm giving you August. Their cumulative wealth is $1,025 billion, which is, we're talking $1 trillion here. Wealth tax was abolished in India in 2016. So where's the money for your cash transfers? The Ladki Bahin program, where's the cash going to come for the cash transfers? It's going to come from cutting the ICDS programs. The ICDS budgets are already cut. It's going to come from, look, the cumulative wealth of our billionaires is 1.7 times our total budget expenditure. It's 62 times our agriculture expenditure. 62 times our agriculture. When you get to the point where Adani, forget power systems, is running Anganwadis. Yeah, Adani is running an Anganwadi in Dahanu, Maharashtra. When you get to Vedanta and Adani running Anganwadis, you can get a good sense of what the future of the Anganwadi and the midday meals are going to be. Guys, you decide what you want to privilege. Grow inequality or grow nutrition. You cannot do both. Thank you.
To be honest, I need time to process that presentation. I can definitely say we are in deep waters, but that said, I am very hopeful for the next now 2.5 days that as researchers and people working for nutrition, we will come up with solutions and we will work together on that. With that, now I would like to invite the moderator of the session, Biraj Patnaik, who's the Executive Director of the National Foundation of India, the country's oldest independent philanthropy. Previously, he served as South Asia Director at Amnesty International and was a principal advisor to the Indian Supreme Court's commissioners in the landmark Right to Food case. Biraj co-founded the Mitanin program, training 70,000 women as community health workers in Chhattisgarh, India, which inspired the ASHA program nationwide. He has played key roles in drafting right-based legislations, including India's National Food Security Act. He's a well-known human rights activist, also involved in civic and gender equality. Please have a round of applause for Biraj. Now I would like to invite our two panelists. I want to start with Ms. Saika Siraj, who's the Country Director, Bangladesh for Nutrition International, leading strategic initiatives to enhance maternal, child, and adolescent nutrition interventions, large-scale food fortification through safety nets and multi-sectoral collaboration for nutrition with government. Saika is an active advocate for nutrition opportunities for vulnerable communities. Welcome, Saika Appa. Our next panelist for this session is Professor Buddhi Marambe, who has served more than 38 years as an academic attached to the Faculty of Agriculture, University of Peradeniya. Do we have Professor Buddhi? Okay, we have him here. He was acclaimed with the Lifetime Achievement Award from the International Wheat Science Society in 2022 and Presidential Awards and National Research Council Merit Award in Sri Lanka for scientific research in climate change and adaptation, food security, and wheat science. Professor Marambe was the lead government negotiator in agriculture at the Conference of Parties at UNFCCC for past 12 years. While being an academic, he has served as a non-executive member on boards of several private sector organizations and the council's executive committees of many professional associations. Thank you, all the panelists. Thank you, Biraj. And once again, thank you so much, Dr. Sainath, for that talk. I will now hand it over to Biraj to take forward the discussion.
Thank you, Isha. Thank you, IFPRI, for having me here. I'm not new to the D4N conferences. I remember attending the first one. There was a gap in between because I lived in Sri Lanka for many years after that. When I was heading Amnesty, it's always a joy to come back to this city where, you know, it's about meeting friends and the great food I had. And I hope, Sainath, you're adequately nutritioned in your stay here, beginning with last night. Exactly. I think the beauty of this conference is not that you meet friends, but the beauty of this conference is that you meet old friends you've never met before. And I think that's what, you know, it's something that I always look forward to. And from across the world this time, not just South Asia. So very warm welcome to Saika and Professor Marambe as we move to somewhat better parts of the subcontinent from India, at least in the food and nutrition front, as well as many other social indicators. Saika, I want to begin with you, right? I mean, Bangladesh is, we've seen, of course, a lot of changes in recent months. But over the last 15 years, we have, you know, the entire system of social safety nets that you have in Bangladesh. Can you dwell on the experience? I mean, a bit on cash transfers as well, because it's not universally accepted in many parts of the region, particularly India. What has been the experience about how, what kind of openness do you see to collaborations between state and civil society, which is again missing in many parts of the subcontinent?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about the social protection programs in Bangladesh, the whole aspect of cash transfer, which I would say is a very vital tool that we have in our social protection programs. But over the years, what we have seen is a model of cash transfer plus, cash plus programs, which has yielded the most kind of results in terms of addressing malnutrition. So if we talk about that, it comes with a framework where we have the cash transfer along with the social behavior change communication, or we can talk like nutrition education and promotion. At the same time, linking the most vulnerable communities and the social safety net beneficiaries with the systems, not only the health system, but also all the nutrition systems, multi-sectoral systems, starting from agriculture, fisheries, livestock, water and sanitation, so all those systems. So that is how we yield the most impact. Well, there are examples of programs in Bangladesh like the Mother and Child Benefit Program, which is the biggest safety net program targeting mothers and children under 5, where the cash transfer is there, but coupled with nutrition education and with utilizing all the nutrition services that is available in the community. So that is the strongest kind of design we have. But there are other programs also impacting to nutrition, like there are some food friendly program, vulnerable women benefit program, where fortified rice or other food products are being distributed. So those coupled with nutrition education support linking with systems kind of gives us an impact.
And if
But
you were to, sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to focus it around, say, nutrition-sensitive
Yeah,
interventions.
yeah.
Would cash transfers make interventions more nutrition sensitive?
Yeah.
What is the evidence of that in Bangladesh?
Yeah, so what we have found is that if you have cash transfer, it immediately kind of addresses one of the issues, the underlying causes, that there is enough purchasing power to buy food. Does not essentially redirect you towards nutritious food for your family. So that is where it is. And then there is this whole aspect of gender disparity, and then there is the intra-household food distribution process, which is a different, a scenario where if we cannot tap into those, processes, then even with the cash and the, education that goes does not really create an impact. So that is another thing. So, what I would, and Bangladesh has also shifted in social protections from a more conditional cash transfer to a more positive, change, promotion of positive changes cash transfer. So we don't tie up 4 ANCs with the cash that is being delivered. Rather, we encourage them to take the services with the cash that is there and have better diets. So I think that, and now that we have advanced a bit, we have looked into the bottlenecks where those are. And it is sometimes termed as a nutrition or a health-focused social protection, but not necessarily it yields the results, because it has to start from targeting the most nutritionally vulnerable population, right? Many cases, what we see is that poverty is the only indicator that is being considered when we are actually, enrolling a household into a social protection program. So that is one thing that we also need to understand, that starting from targeting to the interventions, to monitoring and accountability, all through, it is seen through a nutrition lens, and it is kind of addressed in the whole process. Only then we see, those benefits. And that is where we are kind of trying to shift our, social protection policies and strategies to incorporate. And we in Bangladesh have 127 social protection programs. We can hardly find 3 or 4 programs that are really focusing on nutrition. But all the other programs, many of them have much potential to be, a nutrition-friendly program. So that is, I think, so if the question of systems, dots, and choices, if we kind of focus on that, I would say the social protection programs, what systems we should be talking about is health and beyond health. All these systems like gender-based violence, like addressing, water sanitation problems, all those things has to be linked, and those are the systems that needs to be linked with the social protection programs. The dots, I think, the nutritionally vulnerable people, the climate-affected people, those are the people needs to be considered. So it is always safe to have more people under safety net than to, leave some behind. Of course, it is a question of, budget and everything, but still that is the approach that we should be moving towards, and we have to talk about nutrition equity, as sir, you have already mentioned in your presentation. And whose choices? It's of course the choices of policymakers first, because they have to put those in that one frame that can be implemented. And then it is also the choices of the service providers and the people who are actually reaching out to the most vulnerable with the interventions. Because if they are not sensitized and they don't have that focus, then it's lost in the process. And the end, I would say, it's also informed choice that at an individual level, at household level, at community level, which cumulatively will yield the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Saika. That was very, very detailed explanation. Professor Marambe, I want to come to a question that's probably uppermost in everybody's mind, given the recent elections in Sri Lanka, and the popular mandate that the NPP has, perhaps a mandate that's unprecedented in Sri Lankan's electoral history. One of the impetuses for this, the Aragalia, or the revolution that happened, was also the fact that the discontent in the farm economy because of the sudden shift to organic, and it kind of precipitated and brought farmers into the movement, which is very key, particularly in the south, for the change that got driven. How do you see the policy landscape now changing in agriculture and nutrition for Sri Lanka, given these developments? What is it that we can look forward to learn from Sri Lanka as a region in the coming years?
Thank you very much. Mr. Moderator, I don't think you expect a political answer from me. You spoke a lot of politics right now. Thank you very much, organizers, for inviting me. Our government is just 2 weeks old right now. And the president himself, when you look at the terms of service, he's just 2 months older than the government itself. So we have to wait and see in most of the cases what sort of changes to be made. In fact, the first policy statement the president made on 21st November, just about 2 weeks ago, at the opening of the 10th Parliament, it's debated today at the Parliament. So you should have asked this question about 2 days later. I would have given you a better answer. Where it goes, I think, but I must highlight one thing, what the additional secretary from the Presidential Secretariat made. When she said, indicated that we, that means the government, I'm sure, that looks and strive hard to ensure there will be safe and nutritious food to people, and that itself speak up the intention of the government. And that's the most important line of thinking with respect to policy, as I see it. But let me come to the policy landscape over the years. Colleagues, history has taught us a lot of lessons. And the economic crisis that Sri Lanka underwent recently, we are still struggling to overcome, has also taught us a lot of lessons. And one important lesson I see with respect to nutrition is not to forget the link, the connectivity between crop agriculture and animal agriculture. You know about, we also have the midday meal, as you quite correctly said. The midday meal program about 2 years ago spent only ₹60 per kid, per person. And what happened with respect to egg prices in Sri Lanka during that time? The protein bowl, I must tell you. It was sold at about 17 rupees per egg, 17, and it shot up to 70 rupees per egg, 70. And that's a massive thing. And the midday meal alone cost 60 rupees per person. So we could not even give a 3/4 of an egg for a kid in that case. The lesson that we all learn is that if you forget the place, the raw materials that come in to support the animal feed industry, and therefore the most nutritious food that we market here in Sri Lanka, the whole system fails. What happened was our maize production went down. One of the reasons that you told, Mr. Moderator, that's one of the reasons. Maize production went down dramatically. We did not have adequate foreign exchange to import maize. We are 60% of the energy requirement of poultry feed is met by maize mainly. If not, rice is available, rice will be used in most of the cases. And due to that reason, the chicken and poultry industry, which is totally governed in Sri Lanka by the private sector, collapsed. And we are still struggling to overcome through that process as well. It's important. And this is the lesson that we learned when you said, don't forget this connectivity. Don't forget this integration. Nutrition is the end result. We do understand. We talk of climate change. We talk of all other things. And finally, it deals with human health at the end. So we should never forget these connectivity issues. And that is the biggest lesson I think Sri Lanka gave to the whole world, apart from taking a very drastic decision to go totally organic. It's an utter failure, I must tell you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a lesson that's worth remembering, not just in Sri Lanka, but across the world, and particularly in South Asia, where every time governments have forgotten this connectivity, they have paid a price.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for that. I want to come back to you on another issue. In fact, this is something I want each of the panelists to address from the lens of their respective countries. Now, Professor Marambe, you have also been the lead negotiator at the UNFCCC for Sri Lanka for many years. You've been part of the negotiating team and you've been through those processes. So I'm moving from local politics now to global politics. So where do you see the principal challenges for Sri Lanka given climate change? What are your kind of predictions that you have as a scientist over the next 20 years? And what do you think Sri Lanka should be doing to address them, which it is not doing now? If you had a message for the government.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very important question, because I always say climate change is the most dangerous phenomenon that the humankind has ever faced. Not only human beings, the whole ecosystem, I tell you, created by human beings. That's the most important part. But as you said, just one correction, Mr. Moderator, I was a lead agriculture negotiator, not the overall lead negotiator, so let me correct that part. If you look at the impacts of climate change in Sri Lanka, I'm not going to give you a lot of data, but please do understand, we have the highlands in the center of this relatively large island. Highlands in the center. And that changed our agroclimatology, I must tell you. When the eastern slopes of the central highland is wet, the southern slopes or the western slopes are dry, and vice versa. And that's important that we have to keep in mind. And more importantly, all the statistical analysis have very clearly shown that our wet parts is going to get wetter and drier parts are going to get drier. One of the biggest problems of wet zone even now in Sri Lanka, there is more water. And it's likely that we are going to get more and more water, put agriculture and livelihoods in trouble. The drier parts, the problem is less water. According to the predictions and projections, our dry zone is going to get drier than what is there right now. Had the wet zone got little drier and the dry zone to get little wetter, that would have been the best thing that would have happened to Sri Lanka. But that is not on the cards right now, depending on the analysis that we have done. And very importantly, once again, in the central highlands, the night temperature increases at a faster rate than the day temperature. Both increases, but the rate of increase in night temperature is faster than the day temperature. And naturally, that affects majority of the crops in terms of their production. So there are a lot of challenges. If you look at the overall scenario, that is the situation right now. What the country will have to do, we have to understand the challenge. That's long term, the present as well as the risk for the future. The risk for the future and the challenge is that unless we look for no regret options, that will work in both ways, because all are probabilistic forecasts. We must know that. There may be 70 to 80% probability that something happens, but still there's a 20% chance otherwise can take place. So whatever the technologies that we adopt should be adapted to both situations. If not, the countries in South Asia will fail. Sri Lanka has taken a lot of steps, and according to what the additional secretary says, it's pretty clear that we are focusing more on these particular aspects, although the climate change was not specifically mentioned. So that is important for a country like Sri Lanka and South Asia. Look for no regret options, not an easy option to take, I must tell you, but still, let's look at our seeds, let's look at our technology, bring in new technology, of course, but make sure our traditional knowledge, all those things are embedded into these actions that we take forward. And that's why, even at the global level, climate action on agriculture and food security is being given utmost priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Saika, Bangladesh, again, a country that's going to be very, very deeply impacted, perhaps the greatest impact in the entire region. What do you see as the principal challenge from a gender lens, from a climate refugee and mitigation and adaptation lens?
Right. No, of course, and Bangladesh is a country of climate shocks and environmental shocks, floods and, droughts and everything. So, yeah, and now with the change in one part of the country is getting more salinity, hard to grow crops and hard to, even bring a technology that supports climate adaptive agricultures in those areas. So in terms of, and as you say, the gender, the climate affected women, their challenges and the nutritional challenges, all these things is going to be more complex in the coming decades. So we do have some plans for climate adaptation, some of which also links to food systems. But the nutrition security and the link specifically to reduce up the emerging stunting rates, that is like we had achieved and then we are again going down, and then maternal nutrition and those things in the climate policies and the plan of actions, nutrition is not to be found yet as a specific roadmap how we will address nutrition in the climate affected regions. So where it is now is good in terms of, it is talking about agriculture, it is talking about adapting new technologies and systems for increasing livestock and fisheries and all those things. But with climate change, water sanitation is going to be becoming a greater problem, very closely linked with nutrition, and ultimately, as it will impact the food prices, it will impact the supply, accessibility, affordability, and the amount available to actually address the food plates of the most vulnerable. I think that is where we have to work, and our government has to put more emphasis on, and we need to build a strong
put
policy.
Nutrition
that.
into focus
Yes.
with regard to climate change.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that input. Sanath, I come to you now, right at the end, because I think you've spoken to some of these issues before. Now, in the 3 decades that you and I have worked on many of these issues, I think one of the principal questions that we have seen emerge is it's not just about what we grow and how much we grow, but how we grow it. The shift, the devastation that the shift to a system of agriculture where you're essentially converting oil and fossil fuel into crops is untenable, it's unsustainable. Now, as a keen observer of the farm economy, if you had to pick out 1 or 2 things that you would say need urgent attention with regard to the changes that climate, I know it's not possible to just mark out 1 or 2 things, but top of your mind, what do you think would be the primary challenges? You've spoken about water, you've spoken about other issues.
See, Biraj, first let me get to that bit about climate change. Now, it's self-evident what a crucial, critical problem it is. It's reflecting everywhere in all our countries in terms of affecting agricultural production, in terms of affecting water distribution and water supply. It affects in all these ways. Like, for instance, the district of Churu in Rajasthan. Yeah? In 2021, Churu was the hottest place in the world. For 4 days, it was the hottest place in the world. And in winter, it was the coldest part of the northern plains of India, the same district. Yeah? So lots of agricultural laborers died of heat stroke, especially women. One of the things that, say, we are suggesting, I'm a journalist, I'm the editor of a journalism site called People's Archive of Rural India. And one of those solutions we are suggesting, it's not an overall solution, but will save lives if on every farmland there is a mud dugout for agricultural laborers to take a break. Look, this summer, there were women working in 47, 48 degrees in the farmlands of Churu. It's all open space. Where will you take a break, even if you take a break? So you can do little things that improve people's lives. The second thing, in the Himalayas, the nomadic pastoralists and the semi-nomadic pastoralists, the Brokpas in the eastern, Changpas in the western Himalayas, those who give you your Kashmir sweaters. You know what they're doing to save themselves from climate? Their yak are dying, their sheep are dying. They are grazing because of global warming. They're going higher and higher and higher to graze their animals. We found an instance of people grazing ground at 18,000, 19,000 feet above sea level. It's very standard now for them to graze at 14,000, 15,000. So you have all these problems. At the same time, I'd worry that governments are also tending to make climate change a bogeyman. Some force of nature out there is responsible for all your ills, not us. That's one problem. In Indian agriculture, I don't think your media even our media didn't tell us that in 2020 to 2021, India saw the largest peaceful constitutional democratic protest for justice with 100,000 farmers besieging Delhi, laying siege to Delhi. They had particular demands. Okay, the first and foremost, which is to my mind the serious problem, is how I describe what is agrarian crisis. In 5 words, it's the corporate hijack of Indian agriculture. That is the what is the process by which it unfolds? 5 words. The predatory commercialization of the countryside. Third, what is the outcome? 5 words. Greatest displacement in human history. So they were arguing that don't hand over our agriculture to the corporate world with these laws that you brought. I think that pathway, which will displace hundreds of millions of human beings, that is 95 million farmers and their families, that is the central problem of our time that you've got to address. It's the same in water distribution, it's the same in other things.
Thank you. And I think this aspect of corporate capture is often ignored in nutrition circles. I think there is still a lot of charm or being enamored by public-private partnerships, which we see going forward in nutrition. And I think this is an important caution for all of us at this stage. I want to, I don't want you to feel that you haven't had a chance to engage with this brilliant set of panelists. So I'm going to open the floor for questions now. And can I request, Isha, because there must be a lot of people very patiently watching us online. If anyone online has a question, please put it in the chat box. Are there any questions in the chat box? Because I'd like to, we don't want any exclusions because of digital reasons.
Are there any questions, important questions?
Any questions to the panelists? Please put it on the chat box. Those of you who are online.
Maybe
no?
we can
okay.
start.
So we'll come back to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Apologies, we have, actually we are running out of time. So I think can we just like take 2 questions, burning questions from the room, and then we will have Saikapa, Biraj, Dr. Sainath. I think Dr. Marambe has to leave after this, but we will have them throughout for 3 days. My apologies that we don't have time for Q&A, but if there is any burning question, maybe 2 we can take and then we can move on. Are there any questions in the room?
One here.
Yes.
Can somebody take a mic there, please?
There are 2 standing mics in the room. You can go to the mic and ask your questions.
It's on your left, yeah.
Please be very brief and quick.
Thank you. This is Salendra Kumar from ECRISAT, India. My question to Mr. Sainath has really raised many issues and many problems. I will just ask his guidance if he will suggest 1 or 2 or 3 solutions also to us so that we can work on those in the next 3 days or later. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? We'll just take the questions together. One more question. Okay, the lady right at the end, other end of the room.
Hello, everyone. My question is to Mr. P. Sainath again.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm Dr. Drishti Sharma. I lead the Health Systems and Policy Research Unit at IRV. I'm coming from New Delhi. The question is, how can early and mid-career researchers use evidence-based insights to depoliticize the social protection programs to foster a more informed public dialogue?
Okay. So we have 2 questions.
Biraj, let me just add one online question.
Yeah.
It's again a question to Dr. Sainath, which asks that we are talking about multiple sectors coming together for nutrition, but if we want to improve nutrition in future, which sector needs to be the first and most important to get attention right now?
Okay. You had a question, right? Yeah, please, go ahead. We can't say no to the Presidential Secretariat. Please, go ahead. There's a mic at the back. Please, introduce yourself, and there's a mic just there. Yeah. And I promise this will be the last question, yeah.
Thank you, and I'm Sarada Manoharan, Senior Assistant Secretary to the President, Sri Lanka. My question is, being South Asians, we have a rich indigenous knowledge, and I see an intergenerational inequity in this indigenous knowledge, and there is a close association when it comes to nutrition and indigenous knowledge. So being a journalist, Mr. Sainath, how do you convey this in your writings, or how do you sensitize this aspect of it in your writings? Thank you.
Yeah. So, Sanath, I want this question also to be answered very, very briefly, 1 minute each, by Professor Marambe and Saika. Do you want to come? Yeah, because just 1 minute, only 1 minute, yeah?
Thank you very much, Biraj. And colleagues, I'm taking the mic first because I will leave now back to Kandy. It's another 3.5-hour drive, so allow me. I will take the last question, actually, that was put forward by the Senior Assistant Secretary from the Presidential Secretariat. Yes, indigenous knowledge is not something that we can kick out, especially when it comes to nutrition. But there are certain cases, if you try to link climate change and nutrition, for example, there are certain cases, some of the predictions that use indigenous knowledge has become even obsolete because the climate change is changing so fast, for example, which we cannot even cope up and look at the changes. But the important point is that the traditional nutritious food, for example, which we have ignored in most parts of our life right now, is not to say we have to replace everything that we do, but embedding it, mingling it, and mixing it, that's the most important part in the modern day life. We have this home garden process that's going on. A lot of people think home garden is for food security in total. No, that's a wrong conception as far as I see it. Home garden is to make sure you add nutritional components to your food plate. That is where the success is. That is where the sustenance is, whether climate is changing or not. So let me stop at that particular point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
1 minute before we...
Yes, sure. Yeah, so two things. One, of course, regarding that, I agree completely with you that, indigenous knowledge is very important. At the same time, with the rapid changing environments, it's very difficult to kind of adapt everything as it is, but we should not lose the knowledge. That is, what we have to completely agree with and move forward with. One of the challenge in Bangladesh, what we see is rapid urbanization right now. And with that, even with the indigenous knowledge and the systems that we used to have, there is very little scope of practicing those in an urban setting where both men and women are working most of their entire day, it goes, so a lot of those things are very hard to move forward with. The second thing also, so regarding the urban settings also, like throughout the last several decades, we have designed all safety net programs and everything focusing on rural communities. Even those right now for the urban settings and the urban system does not really fit. So that poses another challenge we have to look into. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll let you leave. Thank you, Professor Marambe, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marambe.
Yeah, the first thing about the gentleman who asked for solutions, there are plenty of solutions, and you are aware of them. Surely, sir, you've heard of the MS Swaminathan Commission report, right? If there are two words that English words that every Indian farmer knows, whether in Northeast or in Northwest or South, it is Swaminathan report lagu karo. Okay? Implement the Swaminathan Commission report. Second, so if you read, there are, by the way, 5 reports of the Swaminathan or the National Commission of Farmers, 6 volumes, 5 reports. The first of these reports was submitted in Parliament in December 2004. The last of the reports was submitted in October 2006. In 20 years, Parliament has not had one day's dedicated discussion to the solutions drawn up by a team headed by the country's most eminent agro-scientist. Parliament it found time to discuss everything else, but would not allow a discussion on the Swaminathan report. One of our solutions, the Kisan Mazdoor Commission, the Nation for Farmers, other bodies with which I liaise and work as a journalist, is a parliament and every state legislature in the country must hold a special session on the agrarian crisis and discuss the problems and discuss that report. And there are updates on the report that have also happened. Yeah? So it's not as if there is no solution. It is the Swaminathan Commission that gave that demand of minimum support price at comprehensive cost of production plus 50%, which is the first demand you heard at the gates of Delhi. There's tons of stuff done on solutions. It's not that it doesn't exist. There are new problems for which the Nation for Farmers, a platform of non-farmer public intellectuals, academics, etc., and Kisan Mazdoor Commission, which represents farmers and things, and includes many of the biggest unions in the country of farmers, have tried addressing issues like climate, etc. And by the way, when it comes to the indigenous, in your question, there were already answers, ma'am. The indigenous knowledge, Professor Marambe was quite right in saying that things are moving in dimensions that are way beyond existing knowledge. But here's the thing. Some of those indigenous people, unlike us, are trying to find solutions on their own. Now, it's like the Changpas of Western Himalayas moving to higher and higher zones, or the Brokpas, you know what they're doing? Because yak is a very special creature. It's quite happy at 35 degrees minus. It'll die at 15 degrees plus. So they're dying in large numbers. They have crossbred yak and highland cattle called Koat to produce a new creature called Zomo that is more heat resilient. Right? So it's at least these people are trying. What attention are we giving to the rest of us giving to their problems? And you also mentioned inequity. I mean, I'm saying the basic issue is inequality. You cannot have solutions in one sector while inequality grows. Imagine we have moved, in the last 3 years, we have added $1 billionaire every 9 days in India. Yeah? And at the other time, we are trying to mop the floor dry with all the taps open and running. We can't do that. It's not possible. About depoliticizing, my request to you, to the lady, is please don't depoliticize. Please do not depoliticize. The whole problem comes in holding our discussions and conferences without touching the issue of policy, without touching the issue of economic policy, without touching the issue of the policies that create problems, without understanding or without wanting to know of the politics of nutrition and malnutrition. So don't depoliticize. It's a very dangerous thing. Understand that the politics is there. It's when I went to university, there was a board on the door which I'll give you in parting. It said, there was a students' union poster put up on the gate. It said, when politics decides whether you get admission in this university, when politics decides who will teach you and what they will teach you, when politics decides what happens to you when you leave the university, when politics decides whether you get a job or not, decide what your politics will be.
Thank you. I think I'm not going to try and summarize this rich discussion. We're also running short of time, so I want to thank each and every one of the panelists, Professor Marambe, Sakia, and Sainath, also for delivering the keynote today, and to all of you for patiently listening in, to particularly those who are online, because I know how tough it is to sit in front of a computer screen while knowing that most of us will be walking the beach in Colombo tonight. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, IFPRI, once again for hosting this panel.
Thank you, Biraj. Thank you, Dr. Sainath. Thank you, Saikapa. Please stay on the stage. Can I also call our opening session panelist, Purnima, Dr. Virakun, and Ms. Loshni, and you, ma'am, as well, for a group photo. Can we quickly call all of you on the stage, please, for a group photo? Dr. Virakun, are you in the room? Oh, okay. So while we are getting this group photo, we are running half an hour late. I know it's okay for us sitting in person, but we also have online audience who have been communicating certain time to join the panelist session. We have communicated to them, and those who are still online, we will start our thematic session at 11:30 instead of 11 a.m. We have a 30-minute tea break, but first what we'll do, all of us will go across the hall through the room Saffron and Ginger. There is an open lawn. Let's everybody go quickly to that open lawn for a group photo for the conference. We come back, we have our tea, and then we will be back in this room for the thematic session TA1, which is agriculture and food security and nutrition. And we will go to the room Saffron and Ginger just across the corridor for the thematic session T1B, which is on multi-sectoral approaches to improving maternal and child nutrition. Yeah, everybody can leave their stuff and bags in the room. It's completely safe unless you are very overprotective of your belongings. But please, first, let's quickly go to the room across the corridor and to the lawn for a group photo. Can IFPRI volunteers please help folks to reach to the lawn? Okay. We will see all of you back in the rooms in 32 minutes.